To understand the psychology of individuals who grew up in the 1970s, one must first understand the emotional climate of that era. This was a time when life moved at a slower pace, communication was direct and physical rather than digital, and emotional resilience was built through experience rather than explanation. The psychological framework of this generation was shaped not by constant guidance, but by expectation, an unspoken belief that one would learn by doing, falling, and standing back up alone. Children in the 1970s were often granted a level of independence that is rare today. Many walked to school alone, played outside for hours without supervision, and solved problems without immediate adult intervention. From a psychological standpoint, this early autonomy fostered strong self-reliance. These individuals learned to trust their own judgment, manage risk, and adapt quickly to changing circumstances. As adults, they often display a deep internal sense of responsibility and a belief that problems should first be handled privately before seeking help. However, this independence came with emotional consequences. Emotional language was limited. Feelings were not routinely explored, validated, or named. Distress was addressed with action rather than conversation. Psychologically, this created individuals who are emotionally durable but emotionally reserved. Many from this generation experience emotions intensely, yet struggle to articulate them. Vulnerability may feel uncomfortable, not because they lack emotional depth, but because they were never taught how to express it safely. Discipline during this period was firm and non-negotiable. Authority figures were rarely questioned, and rules were enforced with consistency rather than explanation. This environment shaped a strong internal respect for structure and hierarchy. Psychologically, this often results in adults who value order, responsibility, and accountability. They tend to follow through on commitments and expect others to do the same. However, this can also lead to difficulty adapting to modern environments that emphasize emotional discussion over clear boundaries. Another defining psychological feature of those who grew up in the 1970s is their relationship with boredom. Unlike today's constant stimulation, boredom was a regular part of childhood. This allowed the brain to develop imagination, patience, and self-entertainment. Long periods of unstructured time encouraged creativity and introspection. As adults, many from this generation possess a strong inner world and an ability to sit with silence. They are often more comfortable with solitude and less dependent on external validation. Technology entered their lives gradually rather than instantly. Their formative years were entirely analog. Communication required effort, letters, landline calls, face-to-face conversations. This shaped a deep appreciation for presence and attention. Psychologically, they often associate connection with physical proximity and shared experience rather than digital interaction. While many adapted successfully to modern technology, they may experience digital fatigue or emotional detachment from online communication. Family dynamics in the 1970s also played a crucial role. Many households emphasized duty over emotional expression. Parents were providers and protectors, not emotional coaches. This often resulted in children who learned to suppress emotional needs in favor of practical behavior. In adulthood, this can manifest as difficulty asking for help, even when support is needed. Independence becomes not just a skill, but an identity. Emotionally, many individuals from this era carry unresolved feelings they have never fully explored. Not because they are unaware of them, but because they were conditioned to move forward rather than look inward. In clinical settings, this generation may present with stress-related symptoms rather than emotional complaints. The mind learned to endure, but the body often remembers what the voice never expressed. Nostalgia plays a powerful psychological role for those who grew up in the 1970s. Memories of simpler routines, shared meals, outdoor play, and community connection provide emotional grounding. Nostalgia is not merely longing, it is a form of emotional regulation. Returning mentally to a time of predictability offers comfort in an increasingly complex world. This does not mean resistance to change, but a need for emotional continuity. One notable strength of this generation is resilience. They learned to cope without constant reassurance. Failure was a teacher, not a trauma. Psychologically, this often results in strong coping mechanisms and a high tolerance for stress. However, it can also lead to emotional isolation. Strength was defined by endurance, not expression. As a result, emotional exhaustion may go unnoticed by others, and sometimes by themselves. In relationships, individuals from this generation often value loyalty, consistency, and commitment. They may struggle with modern relationship dynamics that emphasize constant emotional transparency. Love, for them, is often demonstrated through action rather than words. This can create misunderstandings with younger generations who communicate differently, but it also reflects deep emotional sincerity. From a psychological perspective, people who grew up in the 1970s are not emotionally distant, they are emotionally disciplined. Their inner world is shaped by survival, adaptation, and quiet strength. They learned that life does not pause for feelings, yet feelings never disappeared. They were simply carried silently. Understanding this generation requires empathy, not judgment. Their psychology reflects an era where resilience was necessary, independence was expected, and emotional expression was private. In a world that now encourages openness and vulnerability, their greatest challenge may be learning that strength and expression can coexist. Their greatest gift to future generations is not nostalgia, but perspective. They remind us that the human mind is capable of adapting to any era, and that resilience, when balanced with emotional awareness, remains one of the strongest psychological foundations a person can possess.